My family's always had an animal in the house. From the time that my grandparents had collies and Maine Coons in the house to my parents having parakeets and a Rottweiler and Chihuahua. There's always been no shortage of animals in my family. We had a Rottweiler for a very long time. I grew up with the Rottweiler in the house. They first got it whenever I was 2, and it was just a couple weeks old. Named Dinky, and we had him for a very, very long time. He was an outside dog, had a pen for him outside where he could run around and do Rottweiler things. And I want to say 2006, family wound up getting a pet Chihuahua, which they put in the yard with the Rottweiler. And you would think that a big old chungus like a Rottweiler would wind up using a Chihuahua as a chew toy. They got along very well together. Whenever Rottweiler lay down to sleep, the Chihuahua would lay down on top of him and sleep there. Whenever there was a rattlesnake in the yard that got into their pen, the Rottweiler would go and hide, and Princess, the Chihuahua, would annihilate that rattlesnake. That Chihuahua killed 7 rattlesnakes during her life. It was astonishing to see. They were 2 really good dogs, and they wound up passing away. I don't remember what year, but they both passed very close to each other in time. And for a long while, we actually, for the first time in my lifetime, did not have any kind of animals. No turtle, no parakeet, no dog. And that stayed the story for a good couple months. Mom and Dad swore up and down we weren't going to bother with any more dogs because they have to have space for them. They'd already torn down the dog yard. Don't want to have to pay for the food and the vaccinations and all that sort of thing. So just going to leave it at that and not have any more animals. And I was sad. I was a kid who wanted a dog to play with. But there was one day whenever my mother had finished cooking something, a casserole or some grand dish. She was always coming up with some sort of culinary concoction of magnum opus. And there was some leftover like celery that she wanted me to go and throw in the cornfield. I told you before, we had a cornfield next to the house, and that was where we dumped decomposable things or cooking oil or something to that effect that we did not want stinking in the trash can as it decomposed or clogging up the septic system. So I took the bag of celery out and I threw it in the cornfield, which was freshly tilled. There wasn't corn stalks sticking up anywhere. It was just dirt and ruts everywhere. I dumped the celery out and I went back inside. And I went to my bedroom, and I was probably doing something, playing Mario or something to that effect. And I happened to look out my window. And out the window, I saw that there was a dog about this tall out there eating the celery that I had thrown out. And I couldn't believe it. And I went and I told Mom. I said, Mom, there's a dog out there eating the food we threw out. And she said, blasted stray dogs out there eating that food. Well, you go get the pellet gun and you shoot that thing. Make it go away. I said, okay. So I went and I got the pellet gun out the closet, and it's one of those that you got to pump it up a lot, and then you pull the bolt back, and then you stick the pellet in there just right, and you can't have it like get crooked or anything, and you got to try and push the bolt up, and it'll oftentimes get jammed, and it's an annoying gun. I don't know why they made those. They're blasted cuss. But I went and I threw open my window, and I saw that dog still standing there. And the dog heard the window go up and stopped eating the celery and took a gander and see what's going on around her. Where's that sound coming from? So I ducked down in the window because I didn't want her to see me. I wanted to sneak up and snipe it. So I fiddled with the bolt and I put the pellet in, and the pellet fell. And so I tried to find the pellet. Where's the blasted pellet? Couldn't find the pellet. Got another one out the can, spilled the can of pellets all over my freaking floor. Now I got to get in here with a dustpan, put the pellet in the hole, slid the bolt up, and it got jammed. So I pulled it back down, slid it got jammed again. I threw the pellet across the room and put a BB in there, one of those little copper BBs. Put it in there because I knew it won't jam. Stuck it up in there, pumped it about 3 or 4 times, and stuck that thing out the window and shot, and it hit that dog right in the chest. And she bounced back and barked a little bit because she was surprised. And she looked around, saw me standing there in the window, and I yelled at her and I waved my hand, and off she went. She took off. She was terrified Could not believe that she'd just gotten shot while trying to eat celery. So I closed the window back. I put the gun back in the corner of my room. I didn't take it back to the closet. I went and told my mom, well, she ran off, but she might be back. She said, all right, well, you keep an eye out for her. So I went back into my room and did little young boy in my room things. I don't know what I was doing. But later on, I did wind up looking outside, and sure enough, there's that blasted dog back over there trying to eat celery. So I slung the window back up, and I learned from the pellet mistake and just shot the BB at her. Missed. And she recognized that noise now. She ran off, and she stopped about halfway across the field. And I shot again, missed her again. Confound it. So I rolled the window back down, and I put the gun back in the corner, went through the kitchen, told Mom that dog is back and she's not leaving. So I opened the door and I went out there and chased that dog around the yard. She was petrified of me. I was this big old boogeyman coming to try and get her and steal her celery. And I ran and ran and ran and ran and ran and ran around that yard until I was tired as I could be. And I wound up falling down in the yard because my legs were give out. I was exhausted. I was breathing real heavy. Could not chase that dog around anymore. And the dog recognized that I was sped. And so she stopped running too. And I started crawling towards her because I was going to intimidate her. And she laid down and she showed me her neck, which is something dogs do whenever they are not going to run away, but they're being submissive. And it broke my heart because I had shot this dog in the chest and chased it away. All it was trying to do was eat some celery. And here I was being all mean to it and trying to run it off. And I started petting her and rubbing her and loving on her. Oh my goodness, this is the best dog I've ever seen. Mama, can we keep it? Mom was very distraught that I had become friends with said dog because that thing might have ticks. You're going to get a tick on you and you're going to get sick. And I didn't care because I had a dog now after being several months without Dinky or Princess being alive. But Dad got home around that time and had discovered that we had been adopted. And so he gave her some food. And we sure enough were adopted then. Gave her some food, gave her some water, pet her a little bit, and walked up inside and didn't bother with her anymore. I stayed there for several hours petting that dog, my mom looking out the window disapprovingly at me. And went to bed that night wondering whether or not that dog would stick around. And the next morning woke up, went outside onto the porch. We had a screened-in porch. And the porch had been absolutely ruined. There was furniture laying everywhere. The screen had been punched out of the holes for the screen. It was a catastrophe. And that dog it's a little rat terrier chihuahua mix. I forgot to say that. So it's a small dog. That dog had broken through the screen to get up onto the porch. And we had porch furniture out there, just chairs with cushions on them. And so she had gotten up onto one of those chairs and had dug herself a nest in the fluff of the chair cushion that she ripped open. And that was where she was. And she was just as happy as she could be with that spot. And I knew that was a problem. So I tried my best to clean everything up where Mama wouldn't come out and see that the dog had tried to tear down her house. And Mom came out and was still very upset about that cushion and beat the devil out the dog and ran it off the porch, and she ran off and hid behind a tree. And I cleaned it up and I threw away the cushions, and I asked my dad, because I knew I wasn't going to ask my mom, she'd say no. I asked my dad, are we going to keep that dog? And he said, well, I fed it, and it stayed around and went ahead and made itself a little nest on the porch, so I don't think there's any way to get rid of it now. So we wound up keeping the dog, and the dog kept us. And not a couple days went by, and we'd made a bed for her on that porch, and she'd been sleeping in it. We'd actually cut the screen so that she'd have a dog door she could jump into the porch with. Not a couple days went by, and FedEx arrived to deliver a package. And that was the first time I heard that dog bark at somebody in the yard. And whenever that dog barked, I knew that dog is staying here, because now she's defended her property. So that was how we wound up with Yoda, which is what my little sister named her because of her pointy triangular ears. And the dog's still around, just to this day, still at my mama's house. Survived parvovirus, of all things. There was a period where we didn't know whether or not the dog was going to make it because it had the parvovirus. We'd taken it to the vet. They said this was the problem with it, gave us some antibiotics to give to it, but said that there was a 91% chance the dog was going to die. That's the mortality rate of parvovirus. And so we were told to make sure it got its antibiotics and to feed it, basically whether it wanted to be fed or not, but to also have it drink Pedialyte for the electrolytes. We didn't need to just give it water because it wouldn't be enough. And there was a night whenever I went to bed having just force-fed that dog Pedialyte, and it's just leaking fluid out of its mouth. And I thought, I'm going to wake up to find a dead dog. But I woke up the next morning and I couldn't find her anywhere. And we did not see that dog for 3 days after that night where she was looking like she wasn't going to make it. She wasn't moving. She wasn't making any noise. It was terrible. And I started walking around the house calling for her and just generally being sad because that was a terrible way for a dog to go. And 3 days later, got up, having pretty much resigned myself to the idea that the dog was dead, walked out on the porch, and there she was sitting in her bed, happy as she could be, like nothing ever happened. It made me so mad but happy at the same time. I was mad because she disappeared and happy because she lived. But she's been a fantastic dog. Had her for a long time. And she likes hunting squirrels, likes going out and shooting at the squirrels because she knows that whenever there's a squirrel up in the tree, then she's got to go around the other side of the tree and bark at it to scare it so the squirrel will come back around my side so I can shoot at it with the .22 rifle. That's something we did for many, many years, was hunting squirrels because of them killing all the baby birds that my mom wanted to have for the bird feeders later on. But anyways, I was just going to sit here and sound like a complete country bumpkin for the remainder of my lunch break. I got 5 minutes left and I need to use that to finish this water bottle. So thank you for sitting here and listening to me blabber again. Have a good one.